anything then
Great. Well, why don't we prioritize
um
getting to
sort of
jam with you in that case? And thanks for hopping on while you've got the time. And for everybody else, the sort of the run of play and the conversations, I think we're going to be cycling through conversations about the Cosmos Zero campaign, which is underway. There's been voting in Juno, and there's been voting in Akash, and there's been voting in Gravity Dex. Um, Gravity Dex passed. It looks like Juno and Akash both will not be offsetting their protocol emissions. So excited to use that as an opportunity to learn and chat. And then, I think we'll start the conversation out here with Fede, one of the founders of Evmos, who we've been chatting with for a long time and kind of have shared this common vision for linking what Regen Network is doing to try to build an app chain focused on credit origination and standards governance and quality assurance and sort of that primary set of interactions being community owned, and then but also connecting that with the amazing composability, flexibility, and permissionless innovation of the Ethereum virtual machine natively through IBC. So the relationship between Regen Network and Evmos is pretty exciting. It creates a pretty exciting potential. So want to sort of start with jamming on that and the role of Cosmos Zero and even going beyond in kind of kickstarting that whole refi and Cosmos vision. So, um, Fede, do you want to just share a little bit? I'm not. I think maybe some of the audience just sharing broadly, like what is Evmos, and then we can get to how are we going to help foster a community of refi on Evmos.
yeah, for sure. So Evmos is an EVM IVC compatible chain on Cosmos that aims to create alignment between the different actors and stakeholders in the ecosystem. That means validator users and developers all together aligned in a shared goal of creating amazing infrastructure that can tap into the interoperability of Cosmos and create new use cases and a better user experience overall for the entire ecosystem. And so,
I'm going to just pause you
speaking
for a
of
sec.
which,
I love
yeah,
I love that. I want to sort of double click on that. So what you're saying is the experiment of Evmos is not only to bring the Ethereum virtual machine into the IBC world, but it's also to be working on better incentive alignment that goes beyond the just sort of vanilla proof of stake. We're incentivizing
exactly.
security, but instead is starting to experiment and innovate on how do we incentivize contributions to open source code? How do we incentivize sort of all of the layers that actually build a robust community and robust value?
Yeah, so one of the main things that we're trying to do is here is enabling revenue generation for app developers. So every time a user interacts with a smart contract on Evmos, they are able to receive 50% of the transaction fee. That is now going up to 95%. But I think related to the discussion that we're having today, I think it's very important for refi applications to sustain themselves in especially during this bear market. And we think that by creating a sustainable ecosystem of app developers and users interacting with these applications, if we see this as a marketplace relationship, we can create a more sustainable ecosystem. And interoperability is also helping with that in particular because through interoperability, we can access chains that weren't available to these applications before. So, for example, Region Network, in this particular case, Region Cosmos tokens are able to be represented as ERC20 tokens on the EVM. And so these refi projects on Evmos can natively interact with the region token and use it for liquidity, for example. Same with other ecosystem tokens from Cosmos. So that is something that we're working on during this week. during this entire year, which is the entire interoperability narrative around Evmos, and how can we leverage that to better serve projects like Region?
Right. So it sounds like there's two layers here. Like one is kind of creating composability. Well, three really. Creating composability, creating opportunities for cross-chain liquidity to kind of fuel engagement and innovation. And then the third there is this deeper innovation around fee splits going to dApp developers specifically. So and I just want to sort of put a note there for the region audience. I think there's a really strong opportunity for both being inspired by Evmos and collaborating with this concept of kind of cross-chain token economics. We're in the midst as a community of exploring and dialoguing and debating about pretty radical overhauls to the token economics of Region Network right now. And so this is, I think, really fertile opportunity to engage, innovate, learn, and grow a deeper shared understanding of really exactly how are we creating and programming in the kind of incentive alignment that's necessary for a community to sort of become the owner operators of, a blockchain that's providing really, in Region Network's case, our aim is to sort of be creating ecological regeneration and incentivizing all the actors that need to come together to coordinate to make that happen. And it's very similar to what you're talking about, just in a different domain, right? And or different but interconnected. So maybe now would be a good moment to kind of take the next step in the conversation, Fede, and let's talk about this vision for Cosmos Zero Plus on Evmos.
Yeah, so for the ones who don't know, Gregory, do you want to quickly introduce Cosmos Zero, and then we can
Yeah,
explain
great.
the plus component?
Yeah, great. And I see a few refi folks developing in Solidity out there. So this is very exciting to just kind of unveil some of these opportunities. Yeah, so the Cosmos Zero campaign, actually, we've been collaborating with a community of actors on this process for, I guess it's probably going on almost 2 years now, to create, to bring the entire Cosmos Zero carbon neutral or negative, so that at the protocol level, anytime a new blockchain, new state machine is getting spun up, we're able to be offsetting those emissions. This does a couple of things. One is we really believe, I guess the community that's forming around this believe that this creates a competitive advantage in the marketplace of protocols, because people who want to engage with these protocols can just so clearly jump beyond any of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt related to crypto and carbon. You just say, hey, look, we're not only using an efficient technology and proof of stake, but we're also just fully offsetting everything. It also lays the groundwork for some of these deeper incentives where we're funding public goods or reducing negative externalities, which I think is really core to the sort of like vision and mission that brought many of us into the Web3 space. So that's number one. And number two is this helps sort of like bootstrap this new on-chain value and commodity, which are eco credits and carbon, but starting with real use instead of starting with purely speculative value. So we've been Region Network team and a group of validators. I see Delray from Staken here. Hey, the Regenerator validator, EcoStake, Stakecito. Hey, Stakecito, we'll get you up here as well. Have been working together to go directly to protocol governance bodies and socialize offsetting at the protocol level. So not doing it validator by validator. And I guess this vision is really saying, like, at the end of the day, blockchains are competing with each other in a marketplace, in a protocol marketplace, to bring users and activity, and this gives a competitive advantage. So that's kind of the overview of the Cosmos Zero campaign. And then I think Cosmos Zero Plus is this idea that also we can more deeply align incentives between protocols like Evmos and Regen by sort of building the larger marketplace and opportunity. And that's where we can start to see, how do we bring carbon liquidity onto Evmos? How do we make sure that there's a sort of a space for people who want to be engaging with the production of carbon credits or the use of carbon credits or broader ecological assets, so that this is kind of like the first step in a much deeper alignment to create the kind of virtuous cycle that, really generates a positive network effect. So I'll pass it over to you, Fede, after kind of like outlining all of that.
Yeah. So we are really excited for the Carbon Zero and especially the Carbon Zero Plus. I think this proposal is a great first step for addressing the ecosystem needs and offsetting all the carbon emissions that we've done. But as an ecosystem, and I've spoken to Gregory and the entire region team, we acknowledge that this is not enough. Like the proposal is definitely not enough to ensure that in the longer term, we are not only offsetting all the emissions, but we are also reducing those emissions. And so we see this as a great first step to addressing this problem, like in the short period of time. But with the help of the region team and all the validators of the region community and the entire Evmos community, we plan to reduce carbon emissions over time, and so that's the proposal itself is a huge first step. Now, speaking to the additional integration that we and additional alignment that we want with region is how do we make region carbon credits available on Evmos and for Evmos applications. And for that, we've been working with the business development teams to register those tokens as ERC20 to increase the liquidity of eco credits on Evmos and also of Region Network. And also, for example, making Evmos register coin on the Region Marketplace to purchase eco credits on the marketplace with Evmos tokens, for example. But if we even want to go beyond that, how do we foster a rich ecosystem of refi applications on Evmos and entire ecosystem? And for that, we think that interoperability is key, and that our roadmaps should be aligned to enable decentralized applications and smart contracts to build all these DeFi apps and use Region, for example, for minting and registering new eco credits and then offsetting via interoperability by directly connecting with region. And so that's kind of like the medium and the medium and the long-term alignment that we want with region networks towards a more sustainable ecosystem.
Yeah, love it. And I'm really excited. What I'm particularly excited about is kind of finally more deeply making this relationship between the awesome community of people who have been developing regenerative finance applications in the Ethereum world and Regen Network, because we've been sort of going parallel paths for so long, and interoperability has been hard. So it's been hard for people to participate in the production of eco credits or the use of those eco credits. And this sort of, I think, this idea of Evmos sort of as a Ethereum port city in the IBC universe, and really having kind of this refi dock, and maybe a refi zone in that city that's just like, is really exciting. So I couldn't be more enthusiastic about the opportunities there and just kind of the vision. So it's really exciting. I'm curious, before we kind of, dig into the broader Cosmos Zero campaign, is there anybody out there in the audience that would like to, hop up and ask a question specifically to Fede, or myself about this sort of like the Carbon Zero Plus vision for Evmos? or the opportunities for refi on Evmos, or anything else that you've heard about? Just kind of give a moment for if anybody wants to come up and engage with that, because we're going to kind of shift a little bit. We've got Jake here from Juno. Really excited to jam with you as well about the happenings over on Juno and that relationship. Okay, well, so Curtis is coming up here, so I'm going to let Curtis ask his question.
Welcome, Curtis. You're live.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited for this campaign. Pushing out, different graphics, trying to share and put my information in ways that we can, mitigate this liquidity. Because I feel like there is going to be a setup of just these refi app chains and stuff that are going to be needing these eco credits. The NCT is something that I'm just been really happy about coming to Cosmos and seeing that, coming to Cosmos. But it was the idea behind retirement of these eco credits on Cosmos, and I guess maybe like trying to take different avenues of retirement and trying to, where are we funding these things? And you mentioned Refi Zone. I just the question is, how are we retiring these eco credits, and what does that do for the for us really? What does that do for on the ground development, and what does that mean to people in the crowd?
Great question. Yeah, so retirement of an eco credit is essentially locking or burning that eco credit so that it is no longer tradable. And it is, eco credits could kind of be thought of as commodities, like a carbon credit. It is I mean, there's ways that it's not a commodity, but it's sort of categorized and could be thought of as a commodity, which means it has to be used. Just like, wheat, right? You to use wheat, you're turning it into bread or cereal. And once it's bread or cereal, it's a different thing and it's going to be consumed. Carbon credits are the same. So carbon credits get consumed by a protocol or a business that's offsetting emissions, right? So retirement happens on Regen Ledger, and that's one of the core roles of Regen Ledger and the Regen Network sort of state machine, is ensuring that there's not double counting, ensuring that so there's these sort of more fungible and more liquid versions of the carbon credits that are out in liquidity pools, or being used or affixed to NFTs, or sort of like building different systems. Once those are retired, they become it's sort of like turning it into a soul-bound token, to use Vitalik's language, right? You're turning it from a fungible asset and a liquid asset to a non-fungible certificate that you have offset your carbon. There's a whole nother piece on keeping track of sort of the ecological debit side and the credit side, but we don't need to go into that at this stage. But the important thing is, in tracking retirement, what we're tracking is that there's an entity like a blockchain, like Evmos or Juno or Regen Network, as state machines that have offset their carbon with it. And you sort of, this is what the emissions were, this is what the carbon offsets were, and you can also do that as an individual. And so we're going to be continuing to build out the user story of kind of tracking and keeping track of all of that, but that's the basics.
Just another thing to talk about in terms of on the ground projects and projects that want to develop in any chain. I think there's just going to be a wide variety of people that are attracted to different chains and are doing the underground work. And so, just for the community of Evmos, there's a lot of discussion of short term versus long term. Like, why are we doing this? I think Fede talked about a carbon negative. Eventually getting there is something that we're that's inevitable, I think, for if we're trying to fund those projects. But can we I guess, like, there's a relationship here that we can gain revenue from, I guess, the work being done by funding them. I mean, maybe a surplus of carbon credits are needed, because sometimes doing one piece of work could eventually long term be generating more a surplus of these credits. So I just wanted to kind of bring that out, and hopefully getting the Evmos community that really need more of I guess a spark to see like this development is real. It's going to help long term, and there's going to be even more benefit once we fund these projects.
Yeah, so to speak to that, and we can get Fede's take on that as well, and then maybe we'll shift over to Jake and the Juno context here, is that so there's a lot of demand for carbon credits and biodiversity credits and other ecological credits, even in the midst of kind of this larger bear market and economic downturn that we're in. It's a very new market, and there's lots of room for creativity. So there's lots of people doing amazing work to try to develop new ways of developing credits, but also new ways of using them. And there's so much experimentation that I think maybe in some ways the Evmos community hasn't sort of had a direct connection with, but there's just sort of this renaissance happening around regenerative finance. Tons of applications are being developed, and the cool thing is there's an opportunity for them to either go multi-chain or to sort of find a home in Evmos in order to be natively interchain. And what that enables is for people to call Regen Network for minting, to leverage APIs to sort of track and account for those assets, to leverage Regen for liquidity and Avmos for liquidity as well. So there's this really rich opportunity for project developers, and there's also a very rich opportunity for those of us who are sort of working at the protocol level to create these networks to spur innovation and regeneration. And I think that the long-term excitement here is to have these experiments in incentive alignment and kind of innovation really bear fruit in the real world, right? So that people start to see, hey, through driving this innovation and hosting and building these different decentralized applications, we're seeing really cool real world change in our communities. So we don't have to ask for permission to engage. There's a whole other piece of this, I think, at some point we should talk about, which is just, the I guess the shadow side, and this comes up in sort of like the Twitter troll world, right? The shadow side of, I guess, the climate change narrative and movement is that sometimes climate change is being used to sort of drive fear and wedges between people, and for centralized power bases to accumulate more power. And the exciting thing here is to have a positive narrative in which people, humans like all of us here, in a more democratic and a more decentralized way, can both be engaging with climate change, with the challenge of that, as well as the economic opportunity of addressing it, without it collapsing into sort of a centralized, maybe dystopian version of the world. So that's also sort of really hits on some of the inspiration and ideas on why are we even doing all of this in the first place. So with that, I want to pass it over to you, Jake, because I'm oftentimes inspired by the depth of your kind of ethical and philosophical vision of like, why are you working so hard on Juno and Stargaze and DAO and, self-avowed anarchists? Like, why is, like, from that perspective, why is coordinating and engaging around climate and carbon offsetting important to you personally, I guess? And then we can get into the stuff that's happening, governance processes and all the rest of that.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I was up till 3 a.m. and I fucking set an alarm to show up on this call.
Oh my God, you're a superhero.
Yeah, Jake.
I love you.
First of all,
like,
no, I think these, frankly, I just don't really have hope in our existing institutions to actually solve the ecological crises that, that face us today, and carbon is just one of them. We're at all the fucking deforestation and all the fucking destruction of like the wonderful species that live on this planet, and all the plastic and all the other stuff that's like gonna give us all cancer and make our lives shorter and more miserable. Um, this is fundamentally one of the reasons why I work in crypto, is because I think that these coordination tools unlock the potential to like take collective action on these issues that like affect us all. And yeah, getting into the sort of idea of like inner way how interchain applications can like be built around this stuff. I think it's great, like everything that Regen is doing to like help enable that. And I already know for a fact that there's, we just launched DAO V2. There's going to be a lot of great interchain DAOs that are launching. And the great thing about
So
interchain
excited.
DAOs, we don't have to do a ton of extra work. If you can mint, if there's documentation for, minting like these credits over IBC, like, let's get it out into the public eye. I know there's like and we can like talk with some DAOs that are launching very very soon, about like yeah how they can start like utilizing this in their work. I think it's just about like spreading the word amongst like like the developer communities on just like yeah again these the kinds of things that they can leverage on Regen Network, and just the developer documentation. And the great thing about cross-chain smart contracts with like Cosmosm, for example, is like we can like leverage these things today pretty relatively easily. um, so I'm super stoked. I think
Love it.
you know
Love it.
uh,
I know there's a pretty strong groundswell of popular support in the region community for enabling Cosmwasm. There is already a Cosmwasm testnet for those of you who are maybe excited about that for like sort of interchain contracts. And yeah, I think focusing on sort of the IBC issuance, cross-chain messaging, and retirement story, so that people can do innovation in Cosmwasm, can spin up a DAO, can interact both with Regen and Evmos, a Stargaze. Maybe there's people who are issuing cool NFT collections that are linked to eco credits that have been issued or will be issued in the future. I mean, there's all of this cool innovation. And what's really exciting about the cooperation, coordination, innovation story is, we can each be doing our part and contributing to a much bigger whole. It's really, I'm pretty amped on it.
yeah, one of the things that I think would be really great to do over the next like month or so is you know again just look at that documentation, and we can make some like UI actions in DAO that will allow DAOs to like just offset their carbon credits. No code. They just like you know there's a proposal type. They just click on the proposal type. Maybe they like fill out some information about like yeah what token they're exchanging, like USDC or like Juno, and then uh you know make it just really easy for DAOs to take advantage of these kind of features and to like build that into their mission or just their regular activities. So
Love it.
let's make it
Hey
happen.
guys, it's Jan. How's everybody?
Hey, Jan.
I just wanted to throw in here real quick because it's so on topic. The DAO tooling is, I think, a major puzzle piece to enable the bioregions and their governance. They're going to need more complex decision-making stuff.
Totally. And that's where like DAO, so excited. DAO version 2. I've been playing and with version 1, and we definitely were excited and supported some of the early development of that. Just kudos. And also that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Evmos, because then we can build relationships with our friends over at Gnosis, or there's just so much cool experimentation in DAO tooling taking place in the larger Ethereum community as well. So we just get this, we just have, it's like, let's have all the tools out on the table, because what's important is that bioregional regeneration, this new ecological economy. Let's use the tools that we have available. Fede, you were going to jump in there.
Yeah, Gnosis Safe is already supported on Evmos, and so with our current roadmap of the precompiles, all these DAOs will be able to stake and vote on proposals, so that more communities will be able to express their opinions and surface their votes towards these and other great initiatives.
So I want to dig into some of the controversy, because this has been like lots of kumbaya, good vibes. We're all on the same page, but not everybody is. Not everybody's on the same page. One of the questions that comes up is who should be responsible for carbon offsetting? I mean, if we sort of take for granted, we can get into the other pieces, but if we take for granted that placing a price on carbon and sort of acknowledging there's an ecological debt that comes with much economic activity, and then sort of balancing that ecological debt with an ecological credit in the form of a proven carbon sequestration and carbon credit. Okay, maybe we just say we're all on the same page. That's exciting. It opens up opportunity. Maybe it's not perfect, but we can make it much better, and it's exciting and fun to engage with. Where makes sense for the responsibility? Does it make sense at like the sub DAO, at the DAO level, the smart contract level, the protocol level, all of the above? Just personal opinions more than anything, and maybe also, yeah, like Jake, where do you think the right place to be engaging with eco crediting and eco debiting is within the Juno community, for instance, which is different from Stargaze or Evmos or Regen, because there's a community vibe and sort of an approach. Where's the appropriate place to nest those transactions, that opportunity and that responsibility?
Oh yeah, it's a really good question. I think Juno is a little bit different because it's a lot more decentralized. We don't have like as strong of like a core team or as like of a foundation. And so like everything has to go through governance in some form. And then I think, let's be real, like the extra complexity here is, all-time low, like bear market. Everyone's fucking grumpy. Why should we fund public
Totally.
goods like right now? Like, it's just gonna cause more sell pressure. And, I think there's a part of the Tao Te Ching that I really love, which it's just like, like the good teachers educate the uneducated. And that's like, well, this is kind of, like, the current proposals, they may not pass like as is, and that's fine. I think that there's a will with many in the community to like, do right by this, and we'll figure it out at some point. And governance is sometimes like, yeah, like it can be messy and frustrating, and but at the same time, well, it's people at the end of the day. Governance is people.
So just to sort
I
of dig
think
in on that, it sounds like what you're saying is you do think it makes sense to do this type of offsetting at the protocol level, but we may need to be evolving our approach, and there may be a little
I
bit of
think
a
it's
longer
about,
process.
yeah, because like I think like with Stargaze, it was pretty early on. It was a totally different part of the market cycle. It like people could see like
Totally.
the sales aspect of like everyone was like FOMOing about like non-green NFTs, and so it was like, first of all, there was like a very like healthy like community pool at the time to like fund that. I think if you ask the community like now, like people might have like a different attitude towards it, and there was
Totally.
uh so like timing is like also like a huge factor in like all these discussions. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, like to also go for like individual validators. I'm really excited about like again, like how can we integrate these tools in our DAO tooling, so that like we have a bunch of different groups that are like very mission driven, and like how can they take advantage of these kinds of things? That's a very like decentralized like community, or like individual base, if we're thinking of validators as individuals, even though they're oftentimes DAOs or companies. Um, the like these are things we can like work on like right away. And I think with the governance thing, it's like it's a longer discussion. Actually, was there a governance proposal on Evmos for the carbon
Not
price?
yet.
It's currently under discussion on Commonwealth.
Cool. I think that, this is the reality, is we're just gonna have to, like, go through these, like, community pools at a time when, a lot of people in the community are hurting. You have to understand that a lot of the degens, they lost money, and they're like, why should we fund public goods? And I think that
Totally, totally.
I, I think some of these conversations will be hard, but they're also, like, really good opportunities at the same time, and
Fantastic opportunities for dialogue and education, for sure.
which is not to mean that they won't be frustrating, and that there won't be, like, frustrating, like, voices in there. I mean, like, I think all of Cosmos communities, like, they're like, when you look at, like, Adam, or when you look at Juno, or, like, there's many different types of individuals with many different types of views. Like, I think when the, like, proposal was originally, like, put on Commonwealth, I was really enheartened to see, like, a lot of people were like, this doesn't go far enough. But fast forwarded, like, an FTX, like, collapse, and, like, I think there's a lot more work to be done in terms of, like, I do think these things kind of belong at, like, the protocol level. But at the end of the day, these Cosmos chains are massive DAOs, and we have to convince the massive DAOs to add them at the protocol level, and that's going to take some work.
Totally. Curtis, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, just to kind of jam on this idea of, I mean, if you look at Ethereum and you look at all these, you know, I guess Stargaze, and for the NFT side, this is going to be kind of like the NFT side where we find ourselves in the, I guess, non-protocol level part of it. And so, like, Ethereum, and you have different other Ethereum chains and other chains um, that are having so much money being funded through NFT sales, and projects on the ground just being funded, and you see a lot of success stories of going through that. So that might be another avenue we can think about and ponder, and kind of structure some infrastructure around these NFTs and what they could do for on the ground, and kind of maybe off protocol, and their interaction with the blockchain can also be used, and developers can work on different smart contracts that NFTs can be around. So yeah, just kind of jamming out some ideas, and on whatever
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who's a conservationist, and we've been talking for a while about, like, doing like, endangered species, like, NFT series, where, like, profits from the NFT sale could go directly towards, like, buying back land to support conservation and supporting, like, conservation programs. You know,
If you get a chance, check out the umbrella slash keystone species eco credit methodology that's under development and review right now. Jake, it'd be fun to get your thoughts about that. Pretty advanced. It's a little different from sort of like just crowdfunding a conservation purchase, but really sort of rigorously, like, hey, there's, in their case, this is a group in Brazil that's protecting and expanding jaguar habitat. But they built the framework to also be able to do the same thing for wolves or bison, or potentially marine, like dugongs, or whatever it is, where there's a charismatic elephant, there's a charismatic species that really represents the holistic health of a whole place and a whole space. How do you protect and improve, enhance that, and sort of create a perpetual funding stream, and a set of credits, tokens that represent that? And I think it's really, I've long been excited about composing those types of tokens, those stewardship eco credit tokens, into then NFTs that are sort of a combination of a membership in a cool club, maybe discounts on specific goods and services, and maybe art and, beauty. Because I really feel like, when we intersect I guess, to put it plainly, when we intersect sort of status, where I can kind of flex a little bit, and I can be like, look, I may not have a Rolex, but check out this epic endangered species NFT and this cool art and like, tribal affiliation. That's a big part of how we are as humans. Like we're tribal. We want to be acknowledged for our uniqueness, and we want to be part of a community and a tribe. And I think there's ways to kind of connect all those dots. And I think at Regen Network, we've been so focused on how do you make these claims rigorous? How do we prove that something in the real world is happening? How do we leverage Web3, but also all of the scientific, satellite, remote sensing, digital signatures affixed to attestations from a monitor, all of these things. How do we, like, there's a lot of hard work to do there. Um, and we haven't even really broached the surface on our side. And this is where I'm so excited about relationships with the Juno community, relationships with the Evmos community, relationships with the Stargaze community. There's a whole nother layer there, which is around sort of like the packaging and the marketing and the membership and the sort of like the vibe tribe.
I would even say that there's actually more opportunity there. Like these like
For sure.
protocol like level like carbon credits are kind of it's I think they're important, but like this is really the big opportunity is like giving people like you guys did the hard work to like make sure that these are like, you know, actually what they say they are, that they're actually like, doing the intended thing, um which is really the hard part. And now we have to like, put these tools over IBC in the hands of, uh, like NFT, like artists, in the hands of like DAO builders, in the hands of like smart contract developers, so that they can like fundamentally just bake these into like the mission of what they're doing or into their protocols. And I
Couldn't
think
agree
that
more.
that could be
Couldn't
like,
agree more.
it'll take time to develop it. Like, and I think this is like, something that I want to look into again over. I'm serious, like the DAO action, like let's make it happen. Let's put it like in the fucking UI to make it easy for like every DAO to like take advantage of or do.
Love it.
And
Let's
then
do it.
that kind of like distributed like action could actually like, you know, wind up being like surprisingly effective. Like, we saw what Constitution DAO was able to do to like, save the Constitution. What might a like rainforest DAO do in order to, like save the rainforest? Maybe like and I do love your point about like, NFTs and like the kind of
Yeah.
social status side of this thing. It's like anyone who's like ever done anything with profits, how important that expensive gala dinner is, where it's like people pay like $10,000 to like, wear a fancy like suit or whatever and hang out with other people who paid like $10,000 for a fancy party. And that's like how a lot of nonprofits like actually raise their money. It's just like the status symbol around that. And so like, how can we leverage the native things in Web3 of like DAO membership and like NFT collections to like also meet the goals of like helping these kinds of communities?
One of the
Um,
things that I'm mostly excited about is DAO to DAO interoperability. I think the regenerative finance ecosystem could hugely benefit from DAO to DAO interoperability and solving the ecosystem needs by leveraging what Cosmos already offers there. Um, for the ones that are not familiar with interchain accounts, it is a huge opportunity for a DAO account on one chain, say on Juno or Regen or Evmos, to also have their community be represented in in other chains. And there's a huge opportunity so that we can like interact with contracts on Juno, interact with contracts on Evmos, and also interact with the marketplace directly on Regen. And I think there are huge opportunities right there that not only benefit the entire refi ecosystem, but also provide a huge user experience increase.
I love it. I love it. Well, so now we have about 10 minutes left. I want to, and Fede, no, you should, I think you mentioned that you had something you had to go do. So if that's still the case, don't feel bad at
I
all.
cancel it, so no
Oh,
worries.
awesome. This has been too riveting. Great. Well, so I kind of wanted, so now what? It's sort of like we have this vision, and I think there's a lot of alignment in the vision. But also we're in this present moment. We have a governance proposal in Juneau, for instance. Do we fight for that governance proposal? Do we create an education campaign? Do we try, I don't, do we make, is the primary concern sell pressure? Do we make a pledge that we're just going to stake the tokens and, and then look for longer term synergy? Do we let it go and make a
I
better
mean,
proposal? What's the next step here?
I think we just have to learn from this. I mean, this is one of the first I mean, there were earlier on-chain proposals, but it was different time, and so I feel like a lot of communities right now are going to be also the amount of tokens in the ask always goes up if you're denominating things in USD, and I think this is going to be a thing across many different kinds of communities. So we have to mostly just see what happens and then learn what we can from it from follow-up discussions. I think that there's actually really interesting things that could happen. For example, with data, we have a new payment contract or vesting contract, and you can stake the underlying tokens, and then you could use the staking rewards to you know continuously buy carbon credits in
I
real
was
time.
wondering about that, and the
So
fact that you
there's
already have that built is amazing. I mean, that's my sense is in the midterm, that kind of relationship where there's sort of there's an endowment and it's getting staked, it's still providing network security, maybe it's providing a voice and an incentive, but then it's slowly purchasing offsets. That's an awesome. In fact, the Cosmos Zero crew, we had been talking about just that. So the fact that you already,
I always think of these things as opportunities. That sometimes
yeah,
people get really disappointed. It's like, oh no, it's nope. This is just the protocol governance battle, and it's actually good, and I think it makes things stronger in the long run. And for example, even if this proposal did pass, well now we got to go and do that same proposal every year or whatever.
we don't want to
And
do that. This was just meant to be the first out of the gate. I think.
Exactly.
Uh, but we also need to. I mean, on our side, I mean, there's this balance. If we get a no, um, then we have to ask ourselves: is this a no because we're missing something? That there's a first principles mistake, or are we getting a no because, like you're saying, Jake, there's some tweaks to make this stronger. But then the next step, from my perspective, is building these automated tools, these sort of interchain automation tools, so that there's this flow and this exchange. And what we're aiming to do at Regen Network, what our mission is to make sure that that is rooted in real world regeneration, right? And
I
as you
think
said,
it's
Jake, that's
important.
the hard work. Hard work.
I think it's very important to share the longer term vision of the eco credits. As I mentioned before, these proposals, I see them personally as a short term alignment and a short term path forward to reducing carbon emission. We understand that offsetting is not necessarily the end solution, and so working together to reduce emissions with validator communities, that's a first step. And then creating new ways of aligning the ecosystems through interoperability, through bootstrapping the refi ecosystem, as we're trying to accomplish here with Region on Evmos. Um, and so trying to share this narrative of how important this is for the entire ecosystem is very important, because I think a lot of people are failing to see that, um, and are only like seeing the short term effects when it comes to these proposals.
I have a kind of a crazy idea to socialize because Jake and Fede are both here. And this has been swirling around at the edges of my thoughts for actually years. But, this seems like a appropriate time to socialize it and just see, is this crazy? What if we created an interchain refi alliance DAO, essentially? And we all endowed it. We all socialize with the community. Regen puts in a big chunk of Regen. Evmos puts in a big chunk of Evmos. Juno puts in a big chunk of Juno. Maybe other protocols. I imagine Stargaze would be in. Maybe others as well. Maybe Osmosis was an early supporter and seems pretty excited. I don't know. But we sort of create that in a governing council, and we sort of take the lead, because I think the visions for like the Cosmos Builders Foundation and all these other things, they've kind of fizzled. But it feels like we kind of, amongst the people who are passionate about real world regeneration, there's a stronger alignment about funding public goods and sort of engaging around things. Maybe we could just kind of make it happen. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
guys think?
So we talked about this yesterday, Gregory, and I think the main problem that we're having right now, at least in the Cosmos ecosystem, is that region is like when you search on Google for refi, like region is one of the top results, but unfortunately, region is isolated as an app specific chain on Cosmos, so other projects cannot use a region necessarily for composability as other projects that exist, for example, on Polygon. So that has been one of the major drawbacks that I see, at least when it comes to the adoption of region and eco credits on Cosmos. Um, so I'm all for working towards like further interoperability, further composability between WASM contracts and EVM contracts with region and entire refi ecosystem. I think we should try to make region like the king for of the refi ecosystem, and for that I think interoperability and interchain composability is key. And this proposal for an interchain refi alliance could be a potential good first step into solving that problem. But yeah, as I said, there's major limitations for the region of being an app specific chains. Is of course it also has a lot of benefits of having to run their own dedicated chain, but we need to be able to solve these problems by leveraging all the interoperability.
Hey, where are the docs for? I guess I'll just after this call we'll follow up and just give me any docs you have for like the marketplaces and like any IBC. Do you have IBC and like do you have full interchain account support? I just have questions if
With interchain
like
account support.
was it,
So
I
just
think
as a,
we just fucking make it happen. We'll get the smart people on it at DAO, and then
let's
it'll
send it.
be real.
Let's
Like
send it.
let's just
Let's
fucking
send it.
I think that like in many ways, like yeah, we can talk about making like an interchain DAO or whatever, but like let's just create that composability that was just talked about, and that's I think what will like really like set it off and like make it exciting. And then or like here's a Cosmosm smart contract. Every fucking Cosmosm chain can now like do similar things, and other people can make similar kind of protocols, and then like EVM will follow shortly, and then and then everyone can like kind of leverage this in the interchain. So like yeah, I think that's the biggest opportunity is like eyes on the prize. Let's make this composability happen that will allow for the transformation we see. And then in terms of like the proposals, like fuck it, like I will lead a proposal next time, like if this one fails. And I feel like I have enough clout in the Juno community, and we can take whatever we learned from the last proposal, and maybe we can even think about some like new things, like how we might like set aside like some of the funds and like like this annual staking contract or whatever, and then like the staking rewards are just continually going to like purchasing carbon credits. And guess what? If Juno price goes up, okay, well now we're offsetting more carbon credits than like what we expected. So like let's try to like we can work with this stuff. Like I
Totally.
think
And
I
just
think
a thought here, just like in terms of alliance and paying it forward. I think right now, I think Regen would be happy instead of obviously we don't want to market sell Juno or Evmos or Gravity or whatever the token is that's received for this initial offsetting pilot. I think we could like pitch that. We could basically say, hey, look.
I think if we resubmit this proposal and you put in like you gotta talk to the DGens, and that is, if they
Yeah,
hear that, they're like, oh wait, they're just gonna
yeah,
stake and
and we'll
chill,
contribute it.
and
We'll
they're like
contribute it to the refi interchain DAO, as the seed, which will then go back and socialize for other contributions. We'll seed it with Regen, we'll seed it with the Juno and the Evmos contributions that are getting paid for real things. Look, it cost real money to produce those carbon credits. They weren't just conjured from thin air. I just want to make that clear. Those are real world assets. That's like mortgaging your
I think this
house,
is
right?
another like opportunity with the proposals of like, when the third one comes up and like, I think we can do a better let's like educate the community on these things. I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is just public goods, like it's just charity, we don't want more sell pressure. It's like I don't think this is the right way of looking at it, but it's how people look at it. And we got to work with people like where they're at, and I think we can build like I think of these things always as like a learning experience, as an opportunity to like come back and reshape the narrative in a much stronger way that will make basically every Cosmos chain, regardless of their current liquidity or their current token valuation or the current fears in their community, like really want to sign on board for this stuff. So
Uh,
Totally.
yeah, I wanted to kind of bring up some of the stuff that in Evmos that I was proposing about branding and marketing and trying to utilize. There's a discussion going on about education, hackathons, all those kind of things. So maybe I'm very interested in making products and kind of working out market ideas. Get people excited. The excitement exists, the work exists. I feel like we're in a good position to start building, kind of a brand and kind of market ourselves as, real world assets cost, to make these credits. Why not provide people with, certain apparels and get people on board that way? And I feel like those, provide us with decent revenue models and decent revenue streams that can be used to further, fund development and stuff like that. So, I really want to push forward, and I'm hoping, I can get on to keep discussing that in Evmos with this idea behind, and in other blockchains, with these, ideas, branding, marketing, and events and stuff like that. Those are all something that people can interact with in real life. The IRL is a factor off the chain, is really a factor that can be utilized for us in a different way. So just gonna add that in there based off of some of the things you're saying, some of the things that was going on in Evmos. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a good time to sort of start to wrap. Just shout out to Justin in the audience. He and I were chatting about ETH Denver. If anybody wants to participate in the in real life ETH Denver region gathering, maybe we'll start cooking something up now to make that
I'm
all
I'm
happen.
I'm gonna be there, so let's make it
Let's get
happen.
some swag on the move. Let's get some t-shirts. Let's make it happen. All right. Well, I'm super grateful, Jake, Fede, Curtis, Jan, Dave, as always, and everybody out in the audience. Grateful for all the hard work. I mean, a lot of people put a ton of hard work in this first generation of Cosmos Zero proposals. And I think Jake's advice is really solid. Like, let's learn, let's grow, let's keep focusing on how do we align in incentives, how do we paint the bigger picture, which is how this really grounds our ecosystem into the real world, into net positive impact, ecological regeneration, and real revenue generation. So this is sort of the way in which I think we start to ground the ecosystem into a healthy relationship with the real world. So super grateful for everybody. And yeah, until next time, everybody knows where to find us, and have a beautiful week out there.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.